I realize that I have been going about this the wrong way. I have been trying to make videos like I see everybody else making. I have been trying to be this curated, manufactured version of myself to make content, to be a creator, to be a coach, to sell you something. And I've come to realize that how can I talk about being authentic? How can I talk about being your genuine self? How can I talk about living your truth when I am still wearing a mask, when I am still living a lie? Because the other day, my partner got home from Reiki. He had a Reiki appointment. And I hugged him for a very long time, like several minutes on end. And I think that energy transferred onto me because I had this massive shame release. I have had this massive release of fear and shame, and it was excruciating. And I've had this happen when you heal a lot of this trauma, a lot of this intergenerational DNA, deep, lifelong shame, fear programming. Like, people want to talk about affirmations. People want to talk about reprogramming yourself. That's great. The more you reprogram yourself, the deeper that trauma is, the deeper that toxic shame is, it's gonna come out. Because what goes in has to come out. And if you don't walk back through the flames, you can never get out of hell. I'm living proof. But the thing is that how much trauma you've been through, you think that, oh, I've gone through this. Oh, I'm done with this now. No, it comes back. Everything is a spiral. It comes back. Because the underlying shame programming, particularly, in our culture, and as a woman in our culture, for having our abilities, we were burned at the stake, we were lobotomized, we were institutionalized, we were enslaved, we were treated like incubators. We were stripped of all of our autonomy. And so now reclaiming your voice is terrifying because the shame and fear that you feel kept your ancestors alive. And as I was experiencing this release, it was like this pulsating wave from my solar plexus, which is in your stomach, which is where your personal power and shame lives. Pulsating, that feeling in my stomach along with in my joints. I had previously been diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. As I started healing, because I had been suppressing and repressing all those emotions, because everything physical is just a physical manifestation of something emotional, because this is all energy. 99.999% of the atom is energy. The physical reality you see is basically just a projection of your brain. We can get into all that. That's one of my gifts. We're going to talk about it. I'm done hiding who I really am out of fear and shame of being vulnerable, out of fear of not being like everybody else, because you know what? I'm not like everybody else. But we live in a time, and I'm starting to really see this, that AI is feeding us. We read it, we see it, we consume it, we become it. We all sound the same. We all look the same. No, I am done being a manufactured version of myself to make content so that you like me, so that you buy my products, so that you watch my videos. I don't care. I have to be my genuine self. Back to the release. So the release and the shame and the fear of my joints pulsating in excruciating pain, like a 10 on the pain scale. And I'm telling you, as my trauma girlies know, the physical pain that we feel, fibromyalgia, autoimmune conditions, whatever the hell they want to call it, the physical pain of the trauma that we've endured is hell. And I went through it again. I sat there on the couch and it pulsed through every fiber of my being, and it moved up to my heart chakra, and I felt the void. I felt the void expand until it swallowed me whole. I thought I was dying. I genuinely felt like I was dying. Now, of course, I knew that I wasn't. It wasn't a panic attack. There was no thought of fear. It was the physiological, emotional feeling of fear. I sat in it. And I sobbed, and then it moved up to my throat chakra, and I was coughing and I was choking. And it burned. It feels like claws on the inside of my throat. I have gone through this release. I go through this release every time I speak my voice a little bit more before I got on stage. Again, I felt this release because a lot of us have that, especially women, where we're taught to be seen and not heard, to be quiet, stop sharing your opinion, you're too loud, That released. And these went through, and it was really painful, and then it went up to my head, my third eye. I felt like this metal bar was through my brain, and like every time I turned my head, it was like heavy on that side. It's hard to explain. If you've been through any sort of like major releases like this, And I've experienced this with EMDR, with Reiki. I just got out of an acupuncture treatment, which is why I have this epiphany. I think that between the Reiki rubbing off on me from my partner a couple days ago, to the acupuncture today, to sitting with the shame, I stopped running from the shame. I stopped. I sat down and looked at it for what it was, because I was lying to myself, because I was making content, but I was making a curated version of myself so that other people would like me. I don't care if you like me. And you know what? I've come to realize that when I speak my truth, a lot of people aren't going to like it. They're not going to understand it. They're not going to agree with me. I don't care. I know what I know. I have learned so much. I have read more than anyone I've ever met in my entire life. Now, that there are definitely people out there who have read more than me. I just mean personally. I experienced hyperlexia. I took my SAT in 8th grade and scored better than like 85 or 90% of graduating seniors. Okay? I have an incredible brain. And I was also undiagnosed neurodivergent. I no longer associate with labels that see any sort of neurodivergency as a disability, because it's only a disability in a system that chooses to see it as a disability. But here's the thing. What I talk about, I know. I know as much as I know, or I don't talk about it. I have a lot of what would be considered controversial opinions, because I believe in nuance. I believe the further on one side you are, the more you create the other side. There will always be balanced forces, which is why I've eventually become apolitical completely. We can talk about it. I want to talk about the things that I know, knowing full well that people aren't going to get it, that aren't going to like me, that aren't going to want to hear what I have to say. I don't care. Something happened in June that I'm not entirely ready to talk about. I will be. But it was this experience where once again I had this white man in a position of perceived power telling me that I was wrong. And for the first time in my life, that temporary situation I was in did not impact me. I knew I was speaking the truth. I knew that I wasn't going to be silenced. I knew that a room full of liars was not going to take away my dignity, my truth, my voice. And ever since then, I have been completely depleted of yin, which means running on this masculine. I gotta do, I gotta be, I gotta perform, I gotta focus, I gotta create, I gotta sell my product. I don't want to sell you anything. I am so sick of performing to prove that I'm valuable. I'm not doing it anymore. And you shouldn't either. Because who you are, who you actually are, is more beautiful than any curated version you can put on. And you're not going to be for everybody. People aren't going to like you. People aren't going to get you. Men are going to call you too emotional or tell you that you feel too much. Some people are going to tell you that you're weird and that you need to shut up. Good, great, cool. Keep going. I have learned so much that I realize we know nothing. So I could talk to you about all this spiritual stuff. I could teach you how to heal your nervous system. But the fact of the matter is there's a lot of really talented people on this app who already do that. I'm going to teach you what I know. And it's going to be hard to believe and maybe hard to see and hard to understand. But I'm going to tell you that everything that I know, I've read. Multiple sources. I read a lot. I have gone through like 4 or 5 books a week at times. But I don't read fiction. I read nonfiction. I read nonfiction in like every category you can imagine. I have read so many academic papers. My brain could explode. Because it's one of the things that I'm good at. I was in academia for 10 years. I started in an Associates of Science program and got all the way up to a PhD in neuroethology. And in my first year of my PhD, everything kind of broke for a lot of different reasons. We'll talk about it. I'm done hiding any part of my story. Because if my story can help one other person get out of hell a little bit faster, then it was worth it. I'm done holding my truth inside of me because I'm afraid people won't understand. You're not going to understand. Unless you've been through and seen what I've seen and read what I've read and understand what I understand, you're not going to get it. But maybe it'll resonate with somebody in a way that maybe they can speak their truth. Maybe they can see, because I'm here to tell you something, okay? This is the core message of all of it. The collapse has already happened. Society as you know it, the world that you have known, the America for the last 250 years, it's over. It's gone. It's done. It's done. It's all a facade. It's all a program. It's all a game. The elite are already planning what comes next. That's why they're installing you with like these programs of like war and your money is valueless and your job's worthless and AI is taking over everything. No. If you choose to believe that, yes, that will be your world. You can create any reality that you want, but you have to face those deeper programs of shame and fear. And depending on what you've been through in your life and in your DNA, it's in your DNA, okay? Our DNA strands are so long that scientists have tried to say that 99% of it is junk because they don't know what it does. That is so Western science. It really is. That's not the way evolution works, okay? If there's something in your DNA, it's reasoned, it codes for something. We just don't understand it, you know? And people are like, no, listen, if you would have told people 40 or 50 years ago, you had a phone and you had a device in your pocket where like everything you could possibly ever want to know is able to be accessed, they would tell you that you're crazy. I mean, when I was in school, they told us you weren't always going to have a calculator in your pocket, which is why you had to learn all this stuff. Wrong. Stuff changes really fast. That's the technology curve. The further along you get, the further it changes. But you are still the most powerful being in the universe. Everything is created from a thought. But as I've learned in doing this work, I mean, I have done the work, okay? I have been doing the work. EMDR, parts work, acupuncture, Reiki, community healing, going to Buddhist temples and meditating with other people, trauma-informed yoga. I have done retreats. I have done psychedelic medicine. I have done everything. The reprogramming, the identity work. I've worked with a coach. I've said the affirmations. I believe this stuff works and it's important, but here's the thing. If you have that deep, deep program of toxic shame and fear, the more that you do this work, the more that's going to come out. And if you aren't ready for it, it will shut you down. You have to be willing to sit in the pain that you never let yourself feel because you were too young. You had nobody to help you. We are all so traumatized because this is the way the system works. And I can explain it to you in so many different ways, from the anthropology aspect to the neurobiological aspect, to the actual history of it, to the way that we were separated from the divine feminine, to, you know, put all of our power out into this external version of a white man that we all pray to. But where are we actually sending our power, right? I had been trying to make this really nice and neat and clean and easy to understand and easy for people to follow, and trying to be this version of myself. And don't get me wrong, that is a version of myself. But when you go through so much trauma, parts of you break off. It's called parts work. And it's not just in this lifetime, it's across lifetimes, right? So you have parts of you that have left from over lifetimes. And I have been doing the work to call those parts back, and now the work of integrating them. I think so many people leave you at, here's the work, go do it, not telling you what comes up when it actually does, and then it pushes you back into that fear state. I have burned the bridge to all of my past lives. I will never work. I will never be a wage slave again. And I'm going to tell you, I had some really good paying jobs. I've had some really cool jobs, and working 40 hours a week with my neurodivergent brain, at the end of every week, I would sit in my car sobbing, thinking about turning the wheel into the median because I couldn't take it anymore. And I came to the point that I realized that I would rather be unhoused than spend one more day in where I was. And I've had jobs that I really loved that I would have kept doing if they would have let me do them 20, 15 hours a week. And I could have done them, you know. Nobody needs to be at work 40 hours a week. The human brain can do 3 to 4 hours of real work a day. The rest of it's just bullshit. It's just meant to drain you of your energy. Also, can we talk about how jobs used to be from 9 to 5? Now it's 8 to 5 with an hour for lunch. Okay, so we just gave up another hour of our day? We'll talk about it. I have to come to the realization that people aren't going to get what I have to say. But I've lived my whole life being afraid to speak my truth about being afraid to talk about what happened in my life, about what I've seen and the nuance. And a lot of people aren't going to like it. They don't care. When I was sitting with that shame release and that fear release, it felt like I was dying. It really did. Shame feels like death. There's a reason why we are installed with toxic shame. There is a reason why our food is filled with poison. There is a reason they put 5G towers on the top of mountains. And before you say, oh no, 5G, look, I've seen the research. People talk about what those data centers do for sound, what 5G does to the living. It's radiation, it's frequency. And if you think it's harmless, it's because there's been a massive campaign by the telecommunications company, and I can show you the laws. I can show you when Clinton signed it into power, stating that they were not allowed to do research and say that they couldn't place a telephone or wireless tower due to health or environmental effects. Yeah, that's on the books. Let's talk about it. I feel that shame and that fear in my stomach when I even say that, because I'm going to speak truth that other people aren't ready to hear. And you know what? I've lived and died 1,000,000 times. I didn't choose to be born during this time of change, to be quiet, to hide, to be like everybody else. I'm not. I've seen things. I know things, and I know enough to realize that everything that we've been taught is a lie. And these big news stories come out, and they're in the media for 24 hours. It's on to the next thing. I'm not here to fill you with fear. I'm here to show you your power. I'm here to show you that the shame, the resistance you feel, it's inside you. It wasn't your fault. You didn't choose to put these programs in, but it's your responsibility. And I don't know what my channel will evolve into, but I know that, oh wow, look at this little beetle. Oh, he doesn't want to come say hello. I love bugs. Anyway, I'm not going to hide any part of myself. I'm not going to pretend to be a curated version of myself because it makes other people comfortable. Your comfort is suffocating you. Comfort is why nobody is doing anything about the fact that they're drowning in debt, working 60 hours a week, not able to see their family, why we accept the fact that mothers are taken away from their children after 8 weeks and they go back to work full time and then somebody else has raised our children. I saw a video of somebody saying, do you know how badly you have to abuse a mammal, so that it doesn't have children, so it doesn't reproduce? And that got to me, because I'm not having kids. None of my friends are having kids. Because we are the cycle breakers. We are the ones here to end this. And yeah, it's a mix of science and spirituality, the seen and unseen, the things you can know and the things that I've meditated on and have come to me other ways. And if you don't understand it, that's okay. I don't exist for you. I exist for truth. I exist for whatever reason my soul decided this life. And I love you. I love every single living being on this planet. Every single one of them. Doesn't mean that I like everyone. It doesn't mean that I agree with them, but I accept their right to exist. And I love them. And not a single living being deserves to suffer the separation and the pain that we feel because of what this illusion has done, what this program has done. And it's time that we talk about the hard stuff. It's time that we sit in the flames. It's time that we understand that hell is a state of mind and so is heaven, but you have to feel all of your feelings, all of the repressed ones, all the suppressed ones, all of the things you've been hiding from, all of the things you've been running from. It's time to face the shadow. internally and collectively. Because if we don't, you want to talk about the meteor? We talk about that? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. And it's time, and I'm ready. And I feel like I said a lot and said nothing at the same time, but I think that I've kind of reached the point where I realize what I need to do now. And if I'm not for you, there's so many other creators. And if I am, and if what I say resonates with you, even if you don't know why, it just makes sense, I encourage you to stay. I encourage you to follow, because I don't know what this is going to turn into. I don't know. I'm done trying to know the outcome before I do the input. And I can't tell you that I won't ever have a course to sell you, because I worked really hard on my business plan, but I've come to realize that that's not really the point of this right now. The point of this is to tell the truth and to share my story and to use my voice to speak on what I know, which is a lot about a lot. And to show that you are not alone in what you are going through, and that there's a lot bigger things happening. And what is reflected in you is what is reflected in the collective. And if we don't heal ourselves, what happened to Mars is what will happen to us here. Because, the universe expands infinitely in all direction. Time exists in perpetual motion in both directions. Like, what you understand to be reality is just an illusion of your brain. It's just a dream. But when you're convinced that the dream is real, and you're convinced that the feelings that you feel are the truth, well, how do you get out of that? Let's figure it out together. I love you so much, and I'll see you next time.